Good morning, Conscious Conversations. Here we go again. They always come so fast, but I'm always so ready for these when they come through. And today I'm so excited that, well, here's the deal. Nikki texted me yesterday and was like, oopsies, I actually am emceeing a 500 person event tomorrow morning. So I cannot be on Conscious Conversations. And I was like, I know who I'm going to reach out to. And the first and only person who came to mind was you, Deseri Garcia, founder of Vida Aventura and co-founder of High Vibe Tribe Retreats. We get to do these amazing retreats together. And I have always loved and appreciated everything that we get to collaborate on. And so I'm so glad that you could be here to join us for the conversations.
I love the word choice there. I so love and appreciate all the things we get to do. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And so the topic today is really about stressors and, you know, how we keep our calm in the storm. And we've done some topics in the past about what do we do when life doesn't go according to plan. But I think this is really helpful for us to take a deeper look at our nervous system because it is an innate part of our human condition that is always going to be there with us. It's meant to protect us. But if we can just be curious and develop a deeper understanding of what gets it going, and then who do we become when it gets going, and then what can we do about it, I think, you know, that's going to be helpful for the rest of our lives because we cannot escape our human nature. Des, if you reflect back on your conscious journey, can you think of a time in your life when you did not manage stress well?
Well, I can think of times in my conscious journey I still don't manage. I'm like, you want me to start with today or yesterday?
Yeah, right. I so appreciate that.
Yeah, it's definitely both. And I would, here's a good testament to the work that we do and being in practice. Like by no means on my journey am I at a destination or whatever there is. But I always kind of laugh and think about sometimes when people who've known me for a really long time hear someone who has maybe worked with me, let's say in the last 15, 20 years. And they say, God, like, Tess, you're so chill, you're so zen. I think people like who have known me, like their necks probably snap. They're like, who are you talking about? because I can tell you so many different occasions when like I just react, and I jokingly say, you know, no offense to any Latino folks out there, like I just go, I can go Cuban in a hot second, where like the stress gets the better of me, and I just react in a way that isn't how I would want to have if my cognitive brain was online in that second. So I get into, you know, like a lot of us do, amygdala hijack, and it's like, whoa, like, where did she come from?
Yeah.
And then the great thing for all of us is, though, we can catch that and then, you know, put a strategy into place, emotional intelligence strategy, whatever you want to call it, breath, and shift it.
I think what I love about what you said there was that you do catch it, where you're like, whoa, where did she come from? Because, and that is a reflection of a conscious journey. You know, we talk about it a ton, is how quickly, it's not about whether or not it happens. It's more about how long we stay in it. And if we can shorten that time span, because if I reflect back on stress, it definitely still gets me. And I mean, we'll get into like, what do we think kind of builds that up and what are some of our triggers? And then how do other people respond? We'll dig into all of that. But I can think of times where I would have really lived in it and felt justified in it and not had self-reflection or ownership because I just didn't have the tools or the understanding that my experience and my thinking was not the full truth. I didn't know that, right? So I was really stuck in whatever state that was at the mercy of those external experiences.
Yes. And that's like, that's the thing. When we're in that response, like what you said sounded very victimy, right?
Mm,
And when I think we can, that's another way we can catch ourselves. If life is doing stuff to us, then that's a way for us to know, oh, wait a minute, I may be in like not my optimum space in a stress response, because we're life is reflecting back to us, our state.
it is helpful to be, again, like look at it kind of disconnected from who you are, and just like, okay, my, like this nervous system, this body, this
Mm-hmm.
body that I, hold space in when it is stressed, right? Like kind of look at it as your mechanism, if you will. When it is
Mm-hmm.
stressed, what happens? Is it typically the heart rate is going to increase. We may feel flushing, right? Because the
Mm-hmm.
rate is increased. We may feel a flushing in the face. We might feel this rush of energy, and and then the emotional brain is hijacked, as you mentioned, and we get into that fearful or stressed thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
it's also helpful to kind of reflect on, like, what is our most common reaction? Are we fight, which is, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to be snappy. I'm going to be defensive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to wag my finger at you. Are we flight, avoidance,
Mm-hmm.
shut down, withdraw? Are we freeze, where our brain just stops, like it just becomes static? I was at a retreat I held for women in Jacksonville a few weeks ago, a conscious habit retreat, that
Mm-hmm.
one of the women said, my brain just goes blank. I just see static, which is very, indicative of a freeze response. Or you can go into overthinking, which keeps you from acting at all. And then fawn, which is people pleasing, saying
Mm-hmm.
yes, you don't want to, right? But like just digging into yes. I know that typically I'm more fight, but I think it probably depends on the situation. What do you think yours is, Des?
Mine is my go-to is fight with a my follow-up is then probably flight,
Mm,
but it's definitely fight. And something interesting, Amy, about fawn, because fawn is a newer reference for me. Not the experience, but like having it as I usually say fight, flight, or freeze. And the fawn, I like the fawn. I think it's interesting too. I just have had two or three coaching conversations. I notice like when themes show up with clients who have said, man, I just want to stop saying sorry for everything. And
mm,
it's that is a stress response that's gotten habitualized,
mm-hmm.
where and it's like, God, I just really am thinking about my, like they're saying, I'm thinking about my presence as a leader, and I'm over here sorrying everything.
Mm,
And it comes from, you know, like that response, like not quite knowing how to respond. And I'm just, or they have just habitualized, oh, sorry, and
yes.
it's beyond kind of like the Midwest nice thing, because I
Uh-huh.
have clients from all over the place that have shared this with me.
It's so
So yeah, some of our responses just get habitualized.
it's interesting, the now that you mentioned that, back to that, the women that I was with in Jacksonville, there was one woman who every time she'd raise her hand to either share a thought or a question, she would apologize. And
Mm-hmm.
we were, I was like, oh, no need to say sorry. But you're right there. I think there is this habitual piece. And you and I were talking prior to hitting live, where I wonder how often women, if they feel threatened, especially by men, because as much as we love men, we can be seen as prey. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's not funny, but it's true. And, if you were approached by an aggressor, would somebody's response, because I hear of people who are like, they go overly nice and helpful, and in my mind I would be like, I would be telling them to get the F out of my face. Again, it's kind of conditioned response. And yeah, what do we do when we feel threatened and in danger? I think what's also interesting for us to look at when we think of this mechanism of our body is that it doesn't know how to differentiate danger. Like all danger is one and the same, even though
Mhm.
our response might be different. All danger feels life threatening. And I
Yeah.
think that's helpful for us to know that like our body's going to have this response, but we can enact a higher consciousness that allows us to get ourselves to safety, knowing like I'm not going to die, in the
Right.
next seconds.
Yeah. Um, so true. I mean, what do they say? Like, I, I think it's like 5 times per second.
Mm.
We are assessing, am I safe or not safe? Am I safe or not safe? Am I safe or not safe? And, and our default is, I am not safe, because that's what keeps us alive.
I'm curious for you. You do these big trips every year, your YOLO trips,
Hmm.
and they literally are like survival trips. That's what I think of. I mean, I did one difficult hike, hiking 2,500 feet, scrambling rocks. And when I got down to the bottom and had cell service again, you were the first person I texted and said, I have such an appreciation for this. Like, I mean, are you in what is that experience like for you? Do you feel like you're in fight or flight the whole time, or how do you regulate your nervous system, or
Mm-hmm.
is it more helpful not to? What's that experience like?
Yeah, I'm definitely not in fight or flight the whole time, thank God. Because it, like, I now know, have a reference point for that, because my body was so dysregulated. Speaking of those trips, so I'd say the average YOLO trip that I do, where I do like deep backcountry camping and hiking, um, I might be triggered into fight or flight if we have something technical we're doing, or as we're hiking along, if we were to hear a large animal, I would go into flight or fight.
Mm,
My awareness is up. When I'm sleeping at night, the first few nights, I shouldn't say I'm sleeping. I'm one eye is open and I'm listening, because we're just kind of sitting ducks in that tent.
yeah.
But I'm not there the whole time. And Amy, I recently did a climbing trip in Sardinia,
Hmm.
and it was technical beyond what I thought it would be. Technical from the sense of, they had us free climbing, where, based on my very limited climbing experience, but I've done ropes courses and things like that, and my adventure racing, I was shocked that they did not have us harnessed in. Well, on that particular trip, it I got to day 3. This is probably day 3 night. We had done at least 3 nights out there, so it was maybe day 4, and I was like, my body, like, the stress of it was so intense.
Mm.
And the first place I went, because of the work that we do in training, is breath. It's like, you've got to stay in your body. This is me talking to myself. You've got to breathe. And today, you just stay focused at every step, and hanging on by your fingernails every hang along the way. And I literally said, you are going to stay alive today. Like, that's how technical and scary as shit it
Wow.
was.
Wow.
Um, and then I really, really focused on breath and meditation. And when we weren't in those fight or flight situations, just allowed myself to take in things, so that I could do the best that I could to regulate my body and my nervous system. But my body, just by paying attention to our bodies, we know if we are regulated or dysregulated.
Mm.
And um, I had so many signs of dysregulation. It was really, virtually, I couldn't have ignored it.
I mean, I think first off, that response is helpful when you need it, right? Like this stress response is so helpful in situations like what you mentioned, Des, of like, this is danger. And so I need my heart rate to increase. I need my my focus to sharpen.
Mm-hmm.
I need, the extra energy that's stored typically in my glucose and my fat. I need it to be able to be readily available to me right now. And
Mm-hmm.
like it is literally survival. And this also happens, stress can be helpful when we're under a deadline and the pressure is on. We
Yes.
need to
Mm-hmm.
step up and perform. It can be incredibly helpful. My oldest son Brogan, had a chance to ride along with my brother, who is an IFD fireman in Indianapolis, at a very busy house. And
Mm.
Brogan was saying, "Oh, I loved the adrenaline rush and being able to help people." And it's like, yes, that rush, allows you to be more aware and cognizant of like what's happening in the moment. How do I solve whatever this problem is? It's incredibly helpful, in
Mm-hmm.
times like that. But over prolonged periods of time, our body starts to break down because when we are under stress, while yes, focus is heightened, energy is expanded, what starts to not happen is our digestion is suppressed,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't need to worry about digesting food if we're going to die. and our immune system is also suppressed. The pieces of the body, the glucose and the fat that's storing that energy is now being used. So we may have a breakdown of those muscles over time. And so
Yeah.
there could be a breakdown literally of our body if we're under, stress response for too long. We get more sick, we get more injured,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff starts to compound. And I love that you said go to the body, because I don't know, I don't know what the date and time was, but I do know for a long time I was very disconnected to like listening to the signals of my body.
Say more about that.
I don't know that I saw my body, especially in my 20s, as like an intuitive system that would give me feedback, or with
Yeah.
meaning. With meaning, I saw everything as sort of like one off or accidental, and maybe that's a byproduct even of our healthcare system, right, wrong, or indifferent, is like it's so specialized. We've got somebody who's an expert in, you know, nose, ears, nose, and throat, and then you've got a
Mm-hmm.
specialist for the back, and then you've got a specialist that's just for the feet, for shit's sake. And like everything's so separate that I think that I saw my body in that way too, of like not knowing that it was this harmonized, fully connected thing that was also connected with
Mm-hmm.
my mind, that was also connected with the spirit of me. And so
Yeah.
being able to tap in and have a good relationship with your body and listening to those signals, I think, is incredibly helpful, because the mind is often the last to know when it's stressed. The body certainly knows first.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So
Yeah.
when you're tapping into your body, what are the signals that would tell you you're under stress and you need to do something about it?
Great question. And I will say, Amy, like the same response that my body had climbing, it's the same response, like to what you said. It's work related. It is like the grind of having the weight of all these deliverables that you can't get to. It's, conflict, it's other circumstances. It's all relative. Like that is for each of us, like that's our hanging by our fingernails to on the side of a cliff. So your question was, let me go back
How
to
do
the
you feel
question.
it? What do
How
you
do I feel
notice
it?
in
Yeah.
your body? Hmm.
I notice breath is one thing that comes to me first. Like I will notice I'm not deeply breathing. Um, and I actually had a stress response a couple weeks ago. I got myself worked up about this presentation I was giving. I was could also just kind of feel the unease in my body. Like
Mm.
I felt a little more tense. I could notice that my voice was a little higher than lower. Um, I also I just kind of noticed, like in my surroundings, like how I was moving and responding to other people and things. Like I just kind of felt a little bit like, how when you have a little bit of a flat tire and you can kind of feel that bump. It's like something, no, something's off.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I've,
Mm-hmm.
definitely noticed it like in my body, in my surroundings, in my breath, the tone of my voice. Um, and I knew that I was just like, I could feel that I was worked up.
Mm.
So heart racing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How, how do you feel it? Like when you have been, when's the last time that you felt a really intense stress response, and where do you, like, how do you notice it?
Ooh, I mean, I think like you kicked off like, oh, today, I think I'm sure it's been very, very recent, no doubt. And if I think back, like, man, just things, life in general can be overstimulating. If you're a
Mm-hmm.
parent with little kids who always want to touch you, that's overstimulating. We've got Leap, who is our puppy. He's still a puppy, he's about a year and a half old, who's constantly pawing, paw, 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 paw. I need something. And like that could
Mm-hmm.
be incredibly overstimulating.
Yep.
Um, I think what I notice is the things that are often my strengths. Like my strength is being efficient, being direct, but with kindness,
Mm-hmm.
certainty, like giving direction, all of those things. My strengths become become overused and therefore become my weaknesses. So that direct with kindness just becomes overly direct, which can sound sharp and demanding. And those are some of the behavioral things that I'll start
Mm-hmm.
to notice. I think impatience is certainly one
Mm-hmm.
of mine. Um, and there are things that might trigger it, like if the greater my expectation, and if things aren't aligned with my expectation, I have to be careful because that can put me into a
Mm-hmm.
response if I don't talk myself off of that ledge. Or I will tell you, this is one that Jason, my husband, knows. If I'm trying to figure something out, like I'm on the computer and I'm like needing to, I don't know, figure out like tax stuff or whatever. If somebody is hovering
Mm-hmm.
over me and like looking over my shoulder, I I can't. I'm like, I'm gonna need you to have 6 feet separation. I'm gonna need you to give me some.
Oh
That
yeah.
definitely comes up for me. But I think to your point earlier, it is wild, like the things that get us. It is like,
Mm-hmm.
is your inbox overflowing? Have you double booked yourself? Um, is there financial stress
Mm-hmm.
or uncertainty? Is
Yeah.
technology being a pain in the ass? Like you can't get your computer to work, you can't get your slides to load. Those types of things can send us into a tailspin, or just change in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it's change we want and desire or not, change certainly can trigger that fight or flight, freeze, fawn response in us.
Right. And what I'm noticing more and more is, like, I can literally, in the first few seconds of a coaching call, on video, I can see not just the weight of frustration over, like, oh, like this is a work related stress this person is talking about, but it is like the compounded weight of not de-stressing themselves. Like it's a tired beyond a tired. It's a
Mhm.
frustration that is beyond just a typical frustration, and literally I can see the weight of it in the parts of the shoulders, the eyes, the body, and
Mhm.
definitely in the tone. And so that's what's most concerning to me is when we don't allow ourselves any time to de-stress ourselves. That compounding factor, to your point, Amy, turns out as illnesses in our bodies.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and mistakes too. That's the other thing, is like there's some stats that stress impacts our performance. It creates a 50% cognitive decline.
Mm-hmm.
So the parts of us that have the information or know how to do things correctly are really shut off. We don't have access to those parts of our thinking. So we become, even though we think we can't slow down for whatever story we tell ourselves, they need us, I'm going to let people down, whatever
Mm-hmm.
the story is that we believe, we are less effective. And so taking time away is not a sign of weakness, or saying no is not a sign of not being a team player. It really is for the greater good, because you cannot outrun your human nature. So
Absolutely.
moving into, you mentioned breath earlier as being one of the things that you'll notice. What are the steps that you take to get you back to that regulated state?
Mm. Yeah, so I'll slow my breath. And so I'll just take usually, 3 to 5 conscious breaths. When I'm doing that, I'm really sensing what's happening in my body. And so even if it's, I mean, I teach yoga, even if it's just sitting in a chair and I'm just adjusting my shoulders and maybe getting any of the tension out of my neck, or, like rotating my ankles and just a little bit of movement in my body. Um, I've also learned from, this may be a term folks are familiar with, like from um, yoga or from like Pilates, like Kegeling, but I'll do Mula Bandha, which is just, I'm really just squeezing like my lowest chakra to get myself in my body. Because I know that if I can get myself grounded, then, then I can get myself back to this regulated space, to where you said, where I can, okay, now I have access to the rest of, now that my body's online, I have access to my whole brain and not just a part of it.
Yes. I think that's the so important, is like, can we notice it? Notice what we're experiencing. Can we then move to the body? Like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, your breathing, bring your attention back to to the present. Our breathing sends a signal to that vagus nerve that helps, regulate our nervous system, that we're safe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Unclench whatever's clenched, because inevitably it's jaws, it's shoulders high, it's even hands or fists clenched, um,
Yes.
allowing things to unclench and breathe deeply. And then we can move to the mind, and we can start to coach it. We can start to
Mm-hmm.
say, we can name the feeling, or, hey, what are other ways I can look at this situation, and really begin to coach ourselves out of whatever story, or experience has really triggered us. And also just saying like reminding yourself, like, I'm safe. I am safe in
Yes.
this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I am safe. I am not under threat. Like, sometimes we need to command our nervous system by telling it how safe it
Right.
really is. And
Exactly.
and then that's when we get to, decide consciously, like, who do I want to be in this moment? What do we want the outcome to be? Listen, we're going to lose our shit from time to time, because we're human. That's just part of it. I think it's a matter of how quickly can we catch it? And then can we
Yes.
minimize the losing our shit part? Can we just
Mm-hmm.
hit stress response? But people don't see it outwardly. We notice it inwardly, and catch it. I think that's the biggest goal for us here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's where our locus, that's where our power is, to be able to notice it, even if we've been reactive, and then to make amends with ourselves first, and
Mm.
then others.
Well, as always, this conversation has flown by. 30 minutes feels like 5 minutes in the presence
Exactly.
of death, and getting to chat. And hope whoever listens to this, just if you find yourself in that space, to recognize it's your human nature, and B, to know that it's okay. It's never going to go away. It doesn't matter how conscious you become, or, how aligned you are. These things are likely going to find us, but what do
Mm-hmm.
we do with them, and who do we become in the midst of it? So, Des, thank you for sharing your insight and your wisdom and your good vibes on
So
this
good to vibe with
conversation.
you, Amy. Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Big love. Have a good one.
You too. Big love.
Bye.
Bye.